So my name is Abbie Stenberg, and I'm a person in long-term recovery. What that means for me is that I haven't found it necessary to use drugs or alcohol since February 20th of 2013, and as a result, I live a life that is beyond my wildest dreams. I don't say that for applause or for recognition. I say it to let you know that recovery is possible, that it's possible for anyone, that if it was possible for me, it's possible for you. Sometimes I look around and I can't believe this is my life. Today is a huge day for me. I get to stand up here and share my story with all of you, and then I get to go walk across another stage and receive my first diploma. Thank you. And when I tell you that that's a miracle, I don't say it because, I'm so proud of myself. I say it because it's a miracle that I'm alive today. My story is just like so many others. There are 23 million people in this country living in recovery. And, there's probably a lot more who don't even say that they are because of the stigma that's still attached to it, Some of my earliest memories growing up were of feeling different. Feeling like I wasn't the same as my siblings, like I wasn't the same as my friends. I felt like there was something missing for me, and it was a hole inside my heart that I spent a lot of years trying to fill. I can remember being a very young girl and just not feeling okay, not feeling like I fit in, like I didn't feel comfortable in my own skin. To the point where I can remember sitting on a computer chair when I'm like 7 years old and just spinning and spinning in circles because the feelings inside me were so scary that I wanted to feel something else. So I would do anything to feel that. So it made a lot of sense that when my life took a really dark turn and my mental illness became too overwhelming, that I would turn to drugs and alcohol. It was a very logical choice. It worked very well. When I was 11 years old, my parents got divorced and it was like the scariest thing that had ever happened to me. And my feelings were so hard to process that I didn't know what to do. So I threw myself into sports. I threw myself into school. I was a good student. I was an athlete. I loved gymnastics and cheerleading and softball. And, I was a sad kid beyond all that, still so sad. So when I was 14, I sustained an injury in gymnastics that completely altered the course of my life. I was prescribed Vicodin for the first time, and it was my first exposure to a mind-altering substance. And I can remember taking it and thinking, this is how other people must feel. This is how other people must get through life, because I felt okay. I felt normal. I felt like, I could talk to people. I could be in social situations. And, I immediately decided that, well, if this works for, feeling better, then I bet smoking weed helps too. And, I always tell this story because it's just amazing how fast it happened for me. When I was 14, a freshman at Barrington High School, I was secretary of SAD, okay? Students Against Destructive Decisions. And they called me Hugs Not Drugs Girl, okay? And by the time I was 15, I was using drugs every day, selling my prescriptions, barely going to school, failing my classes. And then when I was 16, I was in residential treatment for my whole junior year of high school. So that just tells you that, this is a disease, it's a brain disease, and it took hold of me so quickly and in such a scary, profound way that, I needed help. And I got help, and it was magical, and it was amazing. I can remember being tricked into going into treatment. I walked into the appointment, and they told me I was going to be staying for a few months, and I was terrified, completely had no idea what to expect. I was kind of a sheltered kid, So I walk in there and I meet this girl. She comes walking up to me. She says, name, age, drug of choice, where you from? And I'm like, Abbie, 16, weed, Barrington? I don't know. And she's like, what's up, Abbie? My name's Katie and I'm from Pawtucket and I smoke crack. Do you want to see pictures of my baby? And I'm like, oh my God, what happened? Where am I? What is this? And it was like this moment where I'm like, okay, I'm not in Kansas anymore. And yet I lived with this girl for almost 11 months and found that while our stories were so drastically different, what we felt inside was the same. We both felt that void, that hole. We both were longing for something outside of ourselves that could help us. And we found that storytelling was so magical. It did something for us. It made us feel like we weren't alone. It made us feel like someone heard us, like we mattered, right? So I was in that treatment program for a long time, and I learned a lot. I learned about recovery and about what it means to be in recovery. I learned about a whole community of people, and I didn't really think it was for me, you know? When I got out, I had every intention of trying to do well, trying to go back to school and, live my life and go to college. But I got out and I didn't have that community support. I didn't have other people who were trying to do the same thing I was doing. And by the time I got back into school, back in the same environment I had left, I was using again before I knew it. My trajectory then took a really bad turn. By the time I was 19 years old, I was an IV heroin addict, and all the scary things that come with that, you know? So between the years of 18 and 22 were the darkest years of my life. I isolated myself from my family. I was completely unreachable. They didn't know where I was most of the time. My mother and her sleepless nights, you know. And I had family who loved me, and I knew that. But the pain that I felt inside was so great that I didn't think I deserved their love. I didn't think I deserved to get better. So after a series of, really difficult times in rehab, in and out of detox all the time, I made a decision to change my life, and that came after the death of my grandmother that really completely destroyed me. It was a really hard time, and I didn't know where to go. I didn't know where to turn. I had been to treatment. It didn't work. It didn't work because I didn't want it to work. I had been, to every facility in the state, and what happened was I didn't have anywhere to go. I was out of options. I walked into this community center that someone told me they might be able to give you a bus pass or find a place for you to sleep tonight. And I had this glimmer of hope, and I don't really know where that glimmer of hope came from, but I know that it was just enough to get me through the door. So I walked in there and I dropped my bags and I said, I have nowhere to go. Can you please help me? And those words completely changed my life. Being able to ask for help, not being ashamed of who I was, not being ashamed of where I'd come from or how I looked, because I looked a lot different than I do right now. And I was greeted with this love and understanding and acceptance that I hadn't felt in a very long time after isolating myself. So I met this guy who had this giant, brilliant smile and this huge personality, and he said, kid, you never have to feel this way again. He told me he'd been in recovery for 17 years himself, and that he knew how I felt, and that he wanted to help me. And that completely changed my life. I immediately dedicated my life to this recovery thing. I have been doing it ever since. So that place was called Anchor Recovery Community Center, and his name was Jim Gillen, and he saved my life. Jimmy was this just larger-than-life person. He passed away in 2015 from cancer, and we've been able to name a youth recovery center after him since that. But he didn't die before teaching me a thing or two about advocacy and why it's so important. By the time I had 7 months in recovery, I had been deeply ingrained in a recovery community. That was the turning point for me. That was the recipe that I had been missing for so long, was other people who loved me, who wanted nothing but to support me. It was amazing. They didn't want anything from me. They just wanted to see me succeed. And Jimmy taught me to use my voice. I have been, as my mother says, I have the gift of gab. And I have been able to put it to good use, So I started being a recovery advocate when I had just 7 months in recovery. My picture was plastered over the Providence Journal. It was like a Sunday spread in the paper. I had no idea how big it was going to be, but I took that leap of faith. I had the courage to try and put the word out there that recovery is possible. And the results of just being vulnerable and being able to share my story, it completely changed my life. I share this story just to kind of give you an idea of how greatly it changed my life. So when I came in, I had destroyed my teeth from using. I had been my smile was a mess. I talked like this. I didn't laugh. I didn't smile. And it mentioned in the article in the paper that this had happened to me, that, it was a direct result of using drugs. And I had a dentist reach out to me, and she has completely reconstructed my smile for free. Literally, like, this doesn't happen. It doesn't happen without people being vulnerable and taking a chance and being brave. Like, this is something that storytelling, it's what it's all about, is being vulnerable and letting someone else connect with you in a way that they wouldn't have been able to before. So I became a recovery coach, which means that I get to use my lived experience to help other people with theirs. It's an amazing job. I'm really sad to leave it, but I'm really excited to be joining the PeaceLove family, and I will still be able to be the recovery advocate that I've become. Looking back at that girl that I was, it literally blows my mind. I had to drive through my old stomping grounds to get here today, and I saw some girl struggling on the side of the road, and it hit me that, that was me. It should have been me. I'm a 3-time overdose survivor. I've attempted suicide multiple times. How am I here, And I ask myself that a lot, but in reality, I'm here for all of you. I'm here to be a light for someone who might be struggling. I'm here to share my story and to be vulnerable. And, it has just been such a magical journey, and I'm so excited to see where it's going to go. I'm really just getting started, I'm 28 years old, and I'm getting married next year, and I'm graduating today, and, it's just like, and it's all because I was willing to be brave and to be vulnerable and to share of myself with someone else. And that's how healing happens. It's how people get well. And, if you have a story, I urge you to share it. I urge you to be brave. It is the most rewarding thing you will ever do. And I feel so blessed and fortunate to be able to do it every day. Thank you.